Colleagues, ladies and gentlemen, it's a great pleasure to welcome you all to our today's webinar. Just almost 1 week after the German elections to the German Parliament, we have the pleasure to welcome our colleague, Dr. Viola Neu. She's the head of Department of Electoral and Social Research at the Konrad-Adenauer-Stiftung, to being with us for a straight and direct analysis of the results of these elections, for these anticipated elections. And we are very happy to have you with us, Viola. Thank you for joining us and for giving us your assessment and your insights on the result of these elections of last Sunday. At the same time, we are also very pleased to inform you about the fact that Viola Neu and her colleagues prepared already an analysis about the results, which you can find also on our website, www.kes.de. And we also will try to put it in our chat, the link. So my colleague Jan Bösche did it already. This analysis was published on last Tuesday, if I'm not wrong, and we tried to prepare Monday, sorry, an English translation. So you can find also this analysis with all the needed data from our Department for Electoral and Social Research from the Konrad-Adenauer-Stiftung. So we are happy to have you all with us. We scheduled roughly 1 hour for this discussion and this reflection assessment on the elections. And we will start with the first assessment of Viola Neu about the results, but also about what happened and what changed with regard to these elections, voter movements, challenges, and changes. You are also invited to ask your questions, and we would like to ask you to use for that the question and answer room in Zoom, so that we are able to follow your comments, remarks, questions, and whatever. So thank you very much for joining us. And without further ado, I hand over to Viola. Viola, the floor is yours. Thank you.
Hadi, thank you very much. I'm very happy to be here. Well, honestly, I would prefer to be really in Washington, but it's okay to be it also in a virtual way. I'm not sure how familiar you are with Germany and the German results of the last election. So let me make some brief sentences what's been happening there. So the Christian Democratic Union, it's 2 parties which are just working together in the parliament, won the election. They made gains in this election, and they are a representative of the political center. So former so-called traffic light coalition of the Social Democrats, which are having the Chancellor, and the Greens, which are having the Minister of Economy, and the Liberals, the so-called Yellow Party, which had the finance ministry, had really big losses. The Liberals even didn't manage to get into the parliament because we're having a 5% hurdle as threshold that keeps parties out. We had a new party. It was January 2024 built. It's a secession of the left, and it's named of the one who was the founder of the party, Sarah Wagenknecht. It's a so-called alliance of Sarah Wagenknecht, and she also didn't manage to get into parliament. It was, well, quite close result. Only 13,000 votes were missing. And the last party, which is in the parliament, 2 parties which are in the parliament, are representatives of the fringes, because there's a party of the very far left and a party of the very far right. So the AfD, the very far right or right extremist party, had doubled its result. It's now 20.8%. And nobody expected to see the left again in the parliament. When we had the European election this year, last year in June, the left just got 2.7%. So we were all quite sure they wouldn't manage to get back, but now they are back with approximately 9%. So that's the situation, and the situation also suffers from the fact that the parties of the center are not having a majority to change something in the constitution, which is the first time in Germany ever happened, that the fringes are so strong that they can stop special processes in the law-making process. We have a new election law, and I'm not sure if it will survive this legislation, because we've seen the negative outcome. Well, what hasn't changed is the same like it has been before. In Germany, we have a mixed system of proportional vote and of majority vote. But the most important factor for the parliament is the proportional vote. It's more like in the US when you say it's a popular vote. It's a proportional system. And we have, and this is a factor that's a difference to the US, because in Germany, so-called popular vote, or the second vote, like we call it, is most important for the parliament and the number of seats that are represented by the parties. Now it's changed. The majority vote has to be covered by the second vote. And this had the results that 23 mandates the winner will not be able to go into the parliament, because 23 mandates are not covered by the result of the party in second vote. I don't know if you understand. It's a little bit complicated just due to our election law. And I hope that is going to be changed, because now we see that it's happening in a region which is very prosper, where a lot of economic wealth is, yes, the economy is very strong. We have companies like SAP, the BASF, and all these very important things, and they don't have someone in the parliament which is direct elected. So that's a pity, and I'm sure this law is going to be changed over the legislation period. Well, there's an easy way to do it. You have just to get a little bit larger constituency, so it's not so complicated, but I'm sure it has to be changed. Talking about the political mood, because it has changed very dramatically in the last 4 years. Yes, of course, people are really disappointed with the former traffic light coalition, but it's going deeper, because they are not, they're depressed about the future prospects. They are dissatisfied by economical aspects. They have lost, parts of them have lost trust in the parties, in the politicians, and in the parties' competences. And they are also depressed about their own political situation. So we have a skeptical situation in the people have, and this is a very, very hard thing to change it. And this is a very important thing to change it, because this is where the fringes live from. So more the people are dissatisfied or do not see some future prospects, they are going to vote for the fringes, and that's not good for the stability of the system. Candidates. What we see the first time in Germany, that we didn't have any bonus of incumbency. That's a really new situation. The representatives of the traffic light coalition, the chancellor and the two ministers, lost trust, well, constantly, in a continuous way, since 2022, just a short time after the coalition was built, and they couldn't change it, even not in the campaign. The candidate of the Christian Democrats, well, it's not that he was a real big winner and that he was quite popular, but he was very strong in the leadership images, and his reputation in leading the country, or the expectation of leading the country, that was his pound. That's what we were here living from. Talking about the left, I've just made a short remark that they had a comeback. No one expected in Germany, but we had a situation for the last 4 weeks, 5 weeks, with a very polarized situation. There was a very emotional debate about the role of the AfD, the far-right party. We had demonstrations with hundreds of thousands of people in different cities. And this political polarization was good for the left because they were the one who were very authentical in the way that they had a position against the AfD. It was people trusted in them. And after the last 4 weeks, they won from week to week 1% in the polls. And they were so successful that there's the strongest party in Berlin. Well, the difference to the other parties is not that big, but it's really news that there's the strongest party. They won a constituency in the western part of Germany, and they have in a total 6 direct mandates they never had before. So it's really, we were totally overwhelmed with this result because nobody expected it. Talking about issues, we had not a dominant issue in this campaign. Economical questions and question of asylum and migration were the most important stuff, but on the personal level, it was just a mixture of this and that and a little bit of anything. So we didn't have a clear structure of important questions. A polarization, yes, we see that the personal polarization is just a growing factor. It's not comparable to the situation in the US, but we are concerned about what's happening. So if you are talking about or asking people if they want to have to do anything with person X, you see for example, the Greens has now grown to a party where people on a personal way do not want to act with or to meet people which are just going to vote for the party. So that's a new situation. And what we see is fragmentation. We have a majority of the far-right AfD in East Germany. We have the majority of the Christian Democrats in West Germany. And the third thing I've just told you is a majority of the left in Berlin. So we have 2 parts, East and West, and we have Berlin, which is very special. Perhaps the last remark is on the voter turnout. It has grown and grown, and we know it's a typical effect of 2 factors. The one thing is, are you interested in the outcome of the election? Yes, people were. And it's a sign of polarization where people are not united but fighting against each other. And this helped to bring a voter turnout of 82.5%, which is the highest one since the unification of Eastern and Western Germany. So far for my remarks, and now I'm happy to hear your questions.
Thank you very much, Viola, for these insights and this analysis of the elections to the German Bundestag from last Sunday. You mentioned already that it was a historical voter turnout with regard to the time since the German unification. So it mobilized a lot of people on the one side. On the other side, the results are quite difficult, especially when it comes to forming a new government. As far as we know today, there is only one option for the Christian Democrats to create a government coalition, and this means with the SPD. So according to your assessment, your data, because I know that a lot of pollsters in Germany ask also, what is your favorable government coalition? So Do we know anything how people in Germany would perceive such a coalition between Christian Democrats and Social Democrats who governed already with the CDU in the past, but also now with the traffic coalition?
Honestly, I wouldn't give a penny for polls that are asking things like that, because it was before election. And now we didn't know which parties will get into the parliament. And two parties who could have, well, been member of a coalition are now outside the parliament. So whatever has been measured before is not worth to talk about it. So we have to wait for new data, because the situation has changed so dramatically. And well, we just were thinking, if is it possible to have a coalition of two parties? Do we need three parties? And all this was not considerable. So it's not possible to talk about if the people do like it or not like it. And honestly, yes, today has started the negotiations, and we have to wait what the outcome will be. If it's a good negotiation, if the people have the feeling that it's going forward, that things are going to change, that it's possible to find compromises. So we have to wait a little bit just to see if it's a good situation for the new coalition or not. So it's an open question, but it's the only chance, honestly. So yes, we are damned to be successful.
Before we go into our chat, and I would like to encourage our guests to write their more questions or comments. Just another question, because I found it quite interesting to see that, especially in comparison with the last elections, voter movement, especially under the young generation. And you mentioned already the phenomenon of the Die Linke, the left, which seems to be recovered somehow. What can we say about demographic, let's say about demographics and the voter movements, especially when it comes to the younger generation, which was 4 years ago very much close to the liberals, and now to the left? So what happened there?
Well, yes, we've seen a big movement, but it depends not only on age, it also depends on sex and on education. So, for example, if you are having a man under 35, which has a low education and is living in a rural area, this guy would vote for the AfD with about 40%, 50%. So if you're a younger woman living in the city, higher educated, you tend to vote for left parties. And what we've seen, well, 4 years ago, with the last election, still the Greens have an advantage in this group. And what we've seen, young men in the last election voted for the Liberals, the FDP. It has changed now because the Greens are not, it's the first time that they're not the strongest party in the group of the younger voters, because, well, the disappointment with their work in the coalition was so immense that they suffered from this situation. And, well, the profit came to the left, and the young women in cities and with a good education level just voted for the party. So that's what the success is based on. So it's not only age, but it's a different situation. We were talking about chances in life. So if you're a young man with not good education, perhaps not a good job, you're living in the rural area and so on, so your chances on participation to get something new in the life or to change your life in a different way, they're very, very low. And this is a voting behavior that explains, for example, the good results the populist or right of the far right AfD has. And if you're in a good situation, in a good economical situation, and you have chances of the life, so you're deciding for left parties. At the European election, we saw this movement to the side getting not staying at the Green Party, but moving to some smaller parties, which are now not very relevant because it are far away from the 5% threshold. So they didn't get these votes, but the left were able to get it. And just to add it, it's not only that they're popular on the East now, not now, well, 2 decades ago, they started to become more popular in the western part of Germany. And so even if it's a disproportionate situation in the result, but on the votes, they're getting more votes in the western part than in the eastern part.
Interesting to see. Before we towards the chat and the questions, just I would like to come back to what you raised a couple of minutes ago, issues. At least for here from the US, one could have the impression that there are some dominating issues, especially when we remember the vote in the German parliament on migration and the bill the CDU-CSU brought into the parliament to vote. But what were other issues mobilizing people? Economic situation, definitely. Did foreign security policy play a role? And later on, we will come once again to this question, the United States, transatlantic relations. So what is your assessment with regard to that?
Well, we had every voting group has its own motives, but in the total, we are having very heterogeneous motives. So the Christian Democrats, yes, they are just interested in economical questions and even in home security. The Social Democrats are talking about social welfare, the Greens about climate, and so on. So every group of supporters of the parties has its special agenda, which is not the same on the other side. So it's something like, even if you're talking about issue like rally around the flag, but honestly, the foreign issues of foreign affairs and security and NATO and what has been happening in the US and what's happening in the world didn't play any important role in this campaign. They were not even discussed. But just to have a view in the future, so when the Christian Democrats will have the chancellor, it's the DNA of the Christian Democrats to be very, very careful about the European Union, the NATO, the relation to the US is very important. It has ever been. So I think there will be changes in foreign policy, but we have to wait after the coalition is built. So it's just, well, a prognosis I'm having in this issues. But it's sure they're coming back because well, we know we have to spend a lot of more money on defense. And now we're talking about even right now in the moment, so when the old parliament is still in action, if it's possible to change things for the future. So we take it very serious.
Thank you, Olaf. So now I would like to go to our Q and answers. And Jeff, welcome, Jeff. He has 2 questions. The first one is, the anti-establishment mood of the electorate is significant, as you mentioned it. Yet at the same time, voter participation is rising. In other words, people are more likely to participate in the electoral process now than they were in recent years. But how do you reconcile these 2 different trends?
Well, if you're unsatisfied with the situation, you're motivated to get up and vote. So what we know, well, even in a historical perspective, the more people are dissatisfied, the higher the voter turnout will be. So that's a normal situation. And the second thing is the mobilization and polarization. The more polarized a society is, the more likely it is that the voter turnout is going to increase. And that's been happening here. So, well, it's like a mechanism that's been happening, which is very well known. Because they want, yes, it's like people want to talk about the situation. It's like an interview you're having with those people who are going to the votes. And just for example, The AfD won 1 million former non-voters. That's an immense, it's a tremendous sign what's been happening in this election.
And just one question with regard to that, could we say that the AfD is winning, winning this, had this success mostly due to the non-voters who decided to vote for them?
Not in a total. Yes, they won from also the other parties. It didn't give any voters back, of course. Estimated vote. So now it's 20.8%. And if they wouldn't have the non-voters, it's estimated about 13% would have been the outcomes, the voter outcomes, the result of this election. So yes, they would have also been winning, but not on this dimension. So it's the fringers who are living from former non-voters. That's a mechanism we have seen in many ways. There is a normal situation where there are no fringes. Then if the voter turnout rises, everybody wins. And if it's going down, everybody loses. So it's not dramatic. But if you're having a situation of strong fringe parties and you have a situation that is polarized, then it's a mobilization that helps the fringe parties.
Interesting, thank you. Jeff asks another question. Are you able to determine what effect, if any, arose from the clear statements of support from the US administration, Vice President Vance in the Munich Security Conference, Elon Musk, for the AfD? The percentage support of the AfD didn't move over the last 2 months, despite Musk's support for the AfD and Vance's meeting with Alice Weidel. So did the US support attract or drive away German voters? Or neutralized?
Honestly, we don't know. What we've seen, it's been something like a frozen climate for months. So it's a different, but if we're looking at the polls, they didn't change for more than 1 or 2 percentage points for one or another party. So, well, it's just a margin of error. So nothing has been happening over the campaign. But we don't have any data just to look if it's been under the surface, a lot of movement, which you can see on the surface. We ain't got this data because I think nobody has it, because we should have a really good panel and no one has, just to see these movements. But we don't know if it's been important. Honestly, I do not believe that something like Elon Musk says something good about Alice Weidel is helpful or not. I think it doesn't have an effect, because I do not think that people are so much interested in Germany, in Elon Musk, because he's just playing another role in Germany. So he is just a guy from the US which sells cars and things like that. So it's not so relevant for the political process, and his opinion is not so deeply discussed in the public. Yes, of course, the bubble has seen it and has been discussing it, but even the Munich Security Conference, I'm not sure if I'm going out on the street and asking people what's been happening there and what it is. Nobody will know what it really is. So it's a meeting of experts and politicians, and I'm not sure. No, honestly, I would deny it, the effects. I'm sure it didn't have a real effect, because the AfD became strong with the dissatisfaction and the disappointment with the government. So that's the factor that's important. So I don't know that other things. Well, they're discussed in the political community, but that's all.
Thank you. There is still one question from Dirk Hegen, and he would like to ask you, could you expand a little bit on the new election law and its impact on direct representation?
Yes, it has a huge impact. Well, it wasn't sure before, and now, well, this could change at the next election. That's no law. But now the Christian Democrats suffered a lot from this new law. And if you are looking at the constituencies, so the narrower the difference between the parties are, the higher is the risk that nobody no party will be able to win this constituency. So that's a new rule, and that's not good, because where the parties are close together, it's normally in the prosper parts of Germany. And if you're, well, in a rural area, there's a more clear majority situations than we have in cities. And it's not a good idea to have these regions not represented by a seat. So I really hope, and I do my very best, that this is going to be changed.
Thank you so much. Kaide Altin would also like one question: why did the left and the right were so successful with the youth? And what needs to be changed in order to win them back? Topics or tools of communication, or both?
Time. Well, we have a life cycle effect. It's not an effect of generations. And we see that we have effects of the life cycle. And once when those people become a little bit more older and are getting more used with parties, say, starting to change voting behavior very dramatically. So if you think you win the future because you have now the support of the youth, it's not ideal to follow these ideas, because if you won them today, you lose them tomorrow. So it doesn't help you on the long run, on the long term. And honestly, the left was before the part of the older ones. So it's the first time that the part of the youth, things are changing in the social structure. But it's more important not to look at the youth, but what is covered beyond the social structure. What issues are relevant for a situation where people cannot change the situation or can change the situation. And what we now see, even for the younger women that are voting for the left, a very strong position on fighting the AfD. So they have a moral value that's relevant for their political activities. And honestly, if the AfD is losing support, this position is not as important as it has been at this election. So there are so many different things that are going to happen or not happen that will change the voting behaviors in the next election, even like it has been at this election dramatically. I'm sure about it.
Much interesting. Jeff is just adding one remark, a comment, that he understands definitely the point that Elon Musk is not influential as a person, but there's also the question of the role of his social media platform and whether the X algorithm can boost AfD on social media.
Yeah.
This brings me to the point in general. Do we have any idea, any assessment, which role played political influencers, social media, X in the cycle of this election?
Honestly, we don't have good data about it. What we know, X is just a platform for the elites. It's not quite popular with normal people. They're having the chat groups in WhatsApp or other groups, and they're using the older ones, Facebook and Insta for the younger ones, and TikTok, of course, for the youngest. But X is not very popular in Germany. I remember data said something about 2% of the population is using X, so it's not as important as, yes, it is discussed. What's got an influence, of course, or might have an influence, is TikTok for the younger ones. But honestly, I haven't seen serious analysis where you can see really an effect in voting behavior, because, well, it's an old debate, and the public sphere is not as separated as it is in the US, and it's nearly impossible to just live in one media world. The AfD is trying it, but even those guys, those people are confronted with different opinions and issues and arguments. and you can't not live in your bubble, even if you try to construct it as homogeneous as possible. It's not possible to live in this world that is totally closed. A little bit closed, yes, of course, but not in a total way. So I'm not convinced with the argumentation, well, those people are just watching TikTok, because they know what's entertainment. They can differentiate between entertainment and information. And we know, for example, if people are looking for good information on TikTok, they are going to serious media providers, and they are not believing that if you're watching a funny cat movie, that's not relevant for this political decision. But what we see, these are, well, even before Musk had X and the companies started to change the algorithms, we didn't know what they are doing. What we just know still, that yes, it's becoming more and more homogeneous, what you are seeing in this media, and we are not sure if it changes voting behavior. And we know the more radical that's the logic of these social media platforms, the more radical and the more interesting and extraordinary your positions, your movies are, the more people will see it or will have an impression. Even we don't know if they watch it or if they just have an impression. So all this, the things that would be necessary for scientific analysis is more or less in a black box. And every scientist is dependent on what one of the platforms opens. Yes, some information you can get from the platforms, but it's not free. It's not like free information, and they are telling you as a scientist which information you get and which one, well, it's just classified.
Very much interesting. I see no more questions in our chat, but if you allow, have one last question when it comes now to the day after, let's say, the day of starting the coalition talks, creating a government. We remember that, especially this campaign, which took place in a very unique context, economic crisis in Europe, war in Ukraine, questioning transatlantic relations, and so on and so forth. One of the headlines of the campaign of the CDU was Politikwechsel, change politics. And definitely this would require somehow far-reaching decisions, first decisions of this new government. Do we have any idea, any data about the readiness of Germans to accept far-reaching decisions when it comes to foreign security policy, when it comes to social security system, when it comes to the labor market, whatever? So other people will go in line with these decisions to be expected from this government, and when Friedrich Merz is becoming the next chancellor?
Well, waking up after the election day, they were discussing in a very strong consensus about how to get more money for defense. And it is consensus which is also the center parties share, the fringe parties do not share, but everybody knows we are under pressure. We have to deal with these issues in a very, very short time. And yes, it's like the awaken. So I'm sure that yes, but before it's it's politics. When you're in a campaign, you want to win a campaign. You're not going to say, well, you have a good idea, yes, and I'm following your idea. So that's not possible in situation of campaigns. But they woke up sober. It was not a party system. They didn't celebrate parties in a real strong way. So it was a sober atmosphere, woke up sober, and now they started to solve problems in the best possible consensus. But I think everybody knows that it's a very, very, yes, a situation where we have to act very fast and very reasonable, and well, in cooperation with our partners and alliances.
Thank you, Viola. There was just one last question coming in, and I think quite interesting, at least with regard to us, but also what is happening in Europe now, because the Netherlands announced already that they will also reorient their development cooperation. So Kai Kim is asking, in Washington, D.C., we are seeing the U.S. pulling out of development cooperation, USAID, WHO. What is the reaction in Germany? Will it take a stronger stance of Germany with the EU and stepping up to fill the gap in leadership? Or do you anticipate a similar trend?
Good question, because I don't have a good answer. From the Christian democratic DNA, I would say we would try everything to cooperate as much as possible with the European Union. But if it's not working, I don't know what's happening then. The Union also changes its politics. So they're trying to get a few steps beyond the Green Deal. They're stressing economic, industrial politics much more. So perhaps both sides will give and take. But the European Union is still, and it will ever be for us a very, very important factor, because we do not believe that we can survive as a region of small nations if we don't cooperate.
Yeah, that's absolutely true. And we still hope that, especially when it comes to development cooperation, that this will still have a future in our political system in Germany, but also in Europe. So I don't see any further questions. By saying that, it's up to us to thank you, Viola, for your assessment and for your very interesting analysis. And once again, I would like to give you the hint for this analysis paper. You can find it still in our chat, but it is also on our website. For those who are more interested in more details and numbers, we hope that this will be helpful for you. So thank you very much for joining us. Thank you to Viola again, and wishing you all the best and have a nice weekend.